Dragi prijatelji, evo, zadovoljstvo mi je što mogu da vas pozdravim iz Instituta za evropske studije. Danas, ja sam Miša Đurković, direktor Instituta za evropske studije i zajedno sa koleginicom Sanjom Ivić danas predstavljam našu kuću i naravno, zaboravio sam uvijek za moje nekako njega kao domaćin, ovdje je naš novosadski deo, dakle, kolega Sašu Gajića, našeg uvaženog člana koji je također novosađen ovdje. Dakle, stvarno mi je zadovoljstvo što ovog našeg gosta, dakle, koga imamo čast i zadovoljstvo da, što kaže, gostimo ova 2-5 dana u Beogradu, možemo da podelimo na neki način sa vama ovde. Dogovor je, dakle, sa ljudima iz Matice i danas je uvaženi kolega Branko Bešten, ovdje naš domaćin potpredsjednik Matice. Drago mi je da je Matica izašla u susret da možemo zajedno da napravimo još jednu zajedničku akciju. Naš gost ovdje, ja neću dužiti mnogo, dakle, naš gost je gospodin Fabio Deo, koji je stručnjak koji živi u Ankoni basično, dakle, inače doktorirao je na univerzitetu u Trstu i ekspert je za niz stvari, zaista izvanredno dobro poznaje dešavanja u srednjoj i centralnoj Aziji, bavi se geopolitikom i bavi se problemima energetske sigurnosti i tako dalje. Juče smo imali jedno zaista izvanredno predavanje u Beogradu koje je on održao, dakle, zajedno sa Prirodnom komorom Srbije i energetičkog ministra organizuju jednu jako lepo raspravu juče i uspelu o problemima energetske neuspele, kako se to definiše, neuspele energetske diversifikacije u Evropskoj uniji i sukobima između Evropske unije i Rusije, posebno na području Balkana, oko energetskih koridora. Svi ste pratili ovo dešavanje oko Južnog Turskog toka i tako dalje. Juče smo dakle imali to jedno predavanje koje je mnogo više vezano za aktualne energetske pitanja, a Fabija smo zamolili da u Novom Sadu održi jedno jako lepo pripremljeno po onome što sam vidio predavanje o temi u kojoj smo u Beogradu nekoliko puta imali mogućnosti već da razgovaramo, ali mislim da u Novom Sadu još nije bilo ozbiljne debate na ovu temu koja je jedna od zaista najzanimljivijih u Evropi. Dakle, to je ova, kako smo je nazvali, One Belt, One Road initiative, odnosno inicijativa Jedan put, jedan pojas. To je jedna velika kineska strategija u kojoj su investirana ogromna sredstva, dakle, neki smatruju ekspanzivnog kineskog nastupa preko prostora centralne i srednje Azije, usmereno pre svega ka istočnoj, ali i zapadnoj Evropi. Srbija je vrlo važno mesto na tom koridoru, dakle, on je član tog kluba 16+1, dakle, procesa koji je sa Kinom otvoren, u okviru koga su predviđena dosta značajna finansijska sredstva za investicije u putnu infrastrukturu, čak i u nauku, kulturnu saradnju i tako dalje i tako dalje. U svakom slučaju, dakle, nema vremena detaljno da vam predstavljam Fabija koji je angažovan na nizu projekata, jedan je povezan sa selom, dakle, to je jedan centar za razvoj energetske bezbednosti, jedan drugi je povezan za praćenje ukupnih geopolitičkih procesa na prostoru Evrope i tako dalje i tako dalje. I zamolit ću ga danas u sledećih 45-50 minuta uvede u ovu temu o kojoj danas govorim. Fabio, I just briefly introduced you to people here. I gave remarks about yesterday, very successful lecture, and I'm giving you a floor. Please. No, translation goes at the screen in Serbian, so you just speak.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this great professional opportunity. I'd like to thank you, Matica srpska institution, to host me and to give me this opportunity, as well as the Institute of European Studies in Novi Sad. And also Mr. Đurković and my colleague Sanja Ivić to support me in this lecture. So, this lecture will be focused on this strategy, the One Belt, One Road initiative, which Chinese start to name in Belt and Road initiatives. But it's the same thing, is this great geopolitical strategy, which is a global strategy. Is that the Chinese attempts to improve connectivity in the in the reshaped global order, and trying to connect regions, separated regions, like Europe, post-Soviet space, Central and Eastern and Southern Asia, and the Middle East. The Belt and Road Initiative has become the centerpiece of Chinese economic diplomacy. It aims at fostering China integration into the global economy, and China called this as an initiative. It is an inclusive initiative involving over 70 countries. And we can also observe that we will observe during my presentation that the European Union as a market is very important for China, but not all the Europe is so important for China. We can observe that there are some parts of the Europe which are more important for China, and it is not the Western Europe, the Netherlands, Germany, or France, but the Southeastern Europe, the Balkans regions, and the Mediterranean. And that as the last point. So, the One Belt, One Road strategy, the One Belt, One Road strategy main aim is to build an integrated set of transportation infrastructures along the land and maritime trade routes that 2,000 years ago linked China to Europe through the Middle East, Central Asia, and East Africa. Look at this map. Oh, no. The next one. No? Okay, the third, if you have the fourth. Okay, this one. And this one. Okay. Okay. This is this direct connection. So the Silk Road economic belt is the overland route, the overland route, and the 21st century maritime Silk Road aims to connect Port of China along the Indian Ocean to the Europe. So crossing the Indian Ocean, crossing Suez, and in order to reach Europe. The Silk Road economic belt, the overland route, was launched by Chinese President Xi Jinping in Kazakhstan in 2013. While the maritime Silk Road was launched in Indonesia. We can observe that there are 6 economic corridors which compose the One Belt, One Road strategy. The China, Central Asia, West Asia corridor, the Eurasian land bridge, China-Pakistan economic corridor, the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar economic corridor, the China, Mongolia, Russia economic corridor, and the China, Indochina economic corridor. So, which is the global impact of the One Belt, One Road strategy? This strategy will involve more than 60 countries, with a population of over 4 billion people, and with in these areas are located 75% of known energy reserves. These initiatives were merged in one initiative in 2015, and the main aim of Chinese authorities is to adapt to the new trend of economic globalization, accelerating the construction of infrastructure connecting China with neighboring countries and regions. So, interconnectivity, promoting economic corridors, improving infrastructure are the main aim of this strategy. Of course, the economic goal is prevalent. To promote Chinese interest is the main target of the Chinese initiatives. But this initiative will promote stability, security, and economic option for the involved countries. So, this China policy aims to create a new position in the multipolar world trying to face with the economic globalization and to seek new model of international cooperation and global governance, promoting the connectivity among separated regions which are distant from China to Europe, promoting a strategic partnership based on land and sea routes. Of course, there is a kind of so this Belt and Road Initiative is based on the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, which are defined the mutual respect for each other's sovereignty, territorial integrity, mutual non-aggression, mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs, and peaceful existence. So, promote connectivity and partnership. This is an inclusive dimension because this strategy is open to all countries which need to be involved, to receive Chinese investment, Chinese loans, to receive the impact of the realization of new infrastructure and the economic impact in the international economies of the Chinese products. So there are the mutual benefits, and there are also there are also mutual benefits and aims to promote the financial integration through some financial institutions which China supported politically and economically. The main goals of this Chinese foreign policy are different. The first one is the need to reduce transportation costs, which is essential for this country's export driving model. The second point is the need to invest huge foreign exchange reserves, which are estimated in the late 2016 in over $3 trillion. The third point, promote the Chinese currency as global reserve currency, and the need to boost the economies along the Belt and Road Initiative route, increase demand of Chinese goods. So the other initiatives can also contribute to addressing the efforts to rebalance the country's growth model by channeling domestic overcapacity in the steel and the cement sector into foreign infrastructure investment, and by supporting the manufacturing sector while reducing its dependence on foreign technology. As a matter of fact, we can observe that since the end of the first decade of the 21st century, China's economy has indeed been growing far slower than the double-digit rates to which the world has become accustomed during the past decades. So it's a new trend that the Chinese President Xi Jinping defined as a China new normal. China, which is a phase, the state of the economy after the onset of the global economic crisis. China's current economic slowdown is a typical normalizing process of a once fast-growing economy. So it is a phase of transformation from a labor-intensive export-driven economy to a capital-intensive, high-tech, domestic demand-driven one. So, which will be based in the tertiary sector, not only in the manufacturing one. It is so a kind of process, a kind of evolution of the Chinese economy, which aim to promote, to develop, to support the national demand. Not only the export, but also the national demand. So this initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative could be helpful for China, because the infrastructure project proposed within the other initiatives would strategically fuel Chinese domestic construction industry, including iron, steel, and cement, and create a new economic corridor, new perspective, new opportunity for the Chinese companies. Another target, another goal of domestic goal, national goal of this strategy is try to develop a consumer market by improving domestic connectivity between the developed coast in the east and the underdeveloped inner areas, and among the countries along the border. One of the main areas involved in this Chinese initiative is Central Asia, the post-Soviet Central Asia as an economic corridor. The problem is that China shares a border with 3 countries of Central Asia with the Xinjiang region. So, Central Asian authorities think that promoting stability and economic trade and infrastructure in Xinjiang and in the post-Soviet Central Asia could help to promote stability and security, which China needs to have a security and stability scenario in order to have safe corridors to reach the European Union markets. So there are also the other financial pillars. In 2015, China supported the creation of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is a multilateral development bank founded by China to finance Asia's huge infrastructure and to promote interconnectivity and economic integration. The United States decided to not support, but 14 European countries, including Italy, appreciated the initiatives and supported joining the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And the initial capital level was $100 billion. The second instrument, the second financial pillar, is the Silk Road Fund. Was established in December 2014 with a capital of $40 billion. And in order to, the aim is the same, promoting connectivity and economic integration. The new development bank was the former BRICS bank, and as an alternative, as it is conceived as a kind of alternative to the US-dominated World Bank and or International Monetary Fund. It is interesting, this bank, because each country is assigned one vote independently on their capital contribution, and the initial capital is $50 billion. So there are a lot of economic support of Chinese banks and other, as you say, foreign or sovereign wealth fund in order to support these initiatives. If we observe the map, we can also clearly understand that there are problems of security. Problems of security, one problem of security in the overland routes concerning Xinjiang and potential terrorist attacks in Afghanistan and Central Asia. But another problem is linked to the maritime routes, because China is strongly dependent on energy imports on maritime routes, and maritime routes are also important to deliver goods in the European Union markets. So 80% of there is a strong reliance on maritime energy routes, 80%. So one of the main foreign policy of the Chinese authorities is to protect the slots, the sea lines of communication. And the creation of military bases in Djibouti, in Eastern Africa, and the so-called string of pearls strategy in order to create trade hubs along the Indian Ocean in order to protect Chinese trade, is feared by Western United States, Russia, all countries which oppose to Chinese plans, because they perceive that from the economic sphere it could become a military initiative in order to control the Indian Ocean. So the problem is try to find alternatives in order to bypass Malacca Straits, protecting the sea lines of communication, as well as to try to find alternatives to bypass Malacca. And one of the strategies is try to create overland corridors before Malacca, reaching China with overland routes. Sorry. Concerning European Union and China, of course there are long-term and traditional relations in the political field, in the diplomatic field, in the economic field. Chinese companies are supporting the European Union in the period of crisis, and the cooperation between China and Europe is also significant in this phase of economic crisis. The Chinese government has emphasized that OBOR is complementary to existing national and European plans to develop infrastructure and boost connectivity in Europe and beyond. So, 1 year after the launch of the Silk Road Economic Belt, in March 2014, China declared that the European Union is included in the OBOR initiative. And generally, the EU member countries welcome a closer engagement with China and Chinese firms, because it is a potential way of complementing insufficient local sources to finance growth and to export European products to Asia, and the global markets. So most of the European Union member countries decided to join the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, because it's a kind of new opportunity to find financial support for their economy. And of course, as I mentioned above, the OBOR initiative is an inclusive initiative. All countries are welcome to be part of this initiative, but the targets of the Chinese strategy toward Europe is different. There are regional differences, because the main OBOR labeled projects are mainly focused on Southeast Europe, Mediterranean countries, and the Balkans. And we can observe that so Western and Northern Europe a limited impact. These countries are important in economic terms as final markets, but they are not involved in some significant projects labeled as OBOR project. Central and Eastern Europe is important within the framework of the 16+1 frame. And the Balkans and Serbia are important in this strategy, mainly Serbia as one of the strategic partners of China in the region, and also the Southern Europe. There are strategic investments mainly located in the Mediterranean countries, which we can consider Italy ports, Spain port, Greece port, and also Adriatic ports in the Balkan of the Balkan countries are so important for this strategy. So, starting from the Western and Northern Europe, we can observe a limited impact. So, in general, Western and Northern European Union states' engagement within the OBOR initiatives remain mainly limited to their membership in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Of course, there is not only this financial investment. We can observe the case of Germany. Among the Western EU members, Germany is probably the most directly concerned by OBOR, as five German Chinese railway projects have been put in place within this framework of cooperation, from Leipzig, Duisburg, Hamburg, another Hamburg, and another Nuremberg. So it's important to highlight that Germany is the final destination of this railway connection. But there is a significant problem, because this is only at present, it is a one-way direction of export. Because trains importing goods and merchandise from China are generally fully laden with electronic and other products. But trains back to China often have problems finding sufficient goods to be sold in the Chinese markets. Also because Russian sanctions against Russia hamper the possibility for European goods to reach Asian markets. So there are some efforts, some attempts to try to improve the situation concerning the delivering of goods, technical details such as the refrigeration system. But they will be solved because there is the mutual and reciprocal interest in order to solve this problem. Concerning France, France is not so important in the Chinese strategy. It's important concerning the port in the Atlantic, like such as Le Havre. Concerning Netherlands, Netherlands is one of the China's largest partner in the European Union, and of course the port of Rotterdam is one of the main gateway for China in order to reach the European markets. So the China Costco shipping company acquired a 35% stake in the Euromax terminal in Rotterdam. And there is also a freight train connection between Tilburg and a Chinese city, Chengdu. And this train, unlike the train connecting Germany and China, the train from Netherlands to China, from China to Netherlands, they deliver consumer electronic and from companies such as Sony, Samsung and Fuji. From Tilburg there are products such as oil industry, cars, wine and trees. The United Kingdom was one of the former European members of the EU which support the creation of the Asian Investment Bank. Concerning the Central and Eastern Europe, the 16+1 mechanism is the platform created in April 2012 by the Chinese leadership that seek a stronger connection between China and the 16 Central and Eastern European countries. There are significant volumes of trade. China and these 16 countries are working closely to increase trade volumes. $10 billion of special credit line was established in 2012. An investment fund between China and these countries was set up with the goal of raising $500 million in the first stage. So there are a lot of financial investment of China to this special part of the European Union, which is one key project region in order to develop the overall. Trade between China and the Central and Eastern European countries reached $56.2 billion in 2012, up to 28% from 2010. So there are countries which are mainly supported by the Chinese efforts. Poland, Hungary and Slovakia, as well as also Serbia. As a matter of fact, we can consider the reconstruction of the Belgrade-Budapest railway as the 16+1 flagship project. Even if there are some delays in order to realize this corridor, is important. It's important because it is a way to support one segment in a large corridor connecting the port of Greece to Hungary, and also is important so to deliver Chinese goods to the markets, but it is also important in terms of regional interconnectivity, in terms of regional integration, in terms of to improve the regional cooperation among countries in the Balkans, in the southern countries, in order supporting the creation of new infrastructure or modern infrastructure. Maybe in late 2017 this project will be realized, and it is interesting to observe that China will provide a long-term loan for 85% of the total budget through the Export-Import Bank of China. This is the way which China aim to implement the project. So financing or giving loans covering 85% of total cost is one of the key adopted by China in order to open this market to the to the Chinese investment. And as I mentioned before, this Budapest-Belgrade railway is important because it is a strategic segment of the overall initiative in the EU, realizing an high-speed rail connection which allow China to have shortened times to deliver goods and to have the possibility to quickly reach the markets. China also control with the COSCO company the port of Piraeus in Greece, as well as China has some stakes in the Suez port. So China is trying to have some potential hub which help Chinese container which aim to reach Europe in order to have the safe deposit or to have some kind of regional and sea hubs in order to help the implementation of this strategy. Upon completion, the traveling time between the two capitals will be reduced from 8 hours to around 3 hours. And so, okay, this is a shorter route. It is a way to also to develop, to promote a political cooperation among the involved countries, and this shorter route allows Chinese products to be more competitive in order to be distributed in the European markets. Okay, we can see this map of the railway connection, and not only Greece but also Macedonia will be involved, and so this shows that Serbia, not only for this project, this flagship project of this 16 plus 1 frame, Serbia is a key partner for China in the region, not exploiting, but starting from the strategic partnership signed in 2009. China has become to invest in the region, has become to invest in Serbia, and investing more than $1 billion in transport infrastructure and energy project. One of the realized projects is the Sino-Serbian Friendship Bridge, and there are other projects in addition to the implementation of the Belgrade-Budapest high-speed railway. For instance, the revitalization of the thermal power plant in Kostolac. Another way to, because Serbia is important, but Serbia is important in the framework of the Balkan region. So developing Chinese investment focused on Montenegro, Albania and Croatia could be useful for Serbia if they will be realized as interconnection, as a segment in order to link Serbia with other Balkans and Adriatic countries. So, Balkans as a kind of gateway to Europe gateway for China to Europe within the other initiatives. Because Balkans, you can see this. Balkans is a kind of gateway of the of this project, because will allow China to be is a kind of transit corridor, one of the main land and sea corridor which could help Chinese initiatives, and I highlight this point, which could help to improve political and regional cooperation with countries which are not so in order to be involved in these trade forms of cooperation. And also the recent Riga Declaration in 2016 aims to improve connectivity and integration. Among different projects with Montenegro and Croatia is important the realization, the link from the Bar port in Montenegro generally to the Balkan region. There are a lot of other projects And for instance, Albania is also important in the Chinese strategy because mainly because it is also an energy corridor and hub of some European projects in the energy sphere, like the Trans-Anatolian Pipeline and the Ionian Adriatic Pipeline, but also because Albania, unlike other Balkan countries, have some energy reserves which China aims to exploit. Moreover, Albania has some ports which would be useful to create, to use as hub in order to implement this strategy. And so the template used by China in the Western Balkans is based on direct lending to governments for infrastructure development projects. So this economic support covering 85% of total project capital is very important. It's important for Western countries, considering the economic crisis. But we can also agree with me that are so important in the Southeastern Europe, because it's the only way the state is not able, national states are not able, the European Union is not able to finance long-term or expensive projects. Also the United States now, with the Trump administration, but also before, are not, there is not a political will to invest in some expensive project. China is willing to invest in the region, to realize infrastructure. Of course, these projects are instrumental and are conceived to support the Chinese invasion of the European Union with merchandise and goods. But this is also a way, like, as in the case of Africa, to promote infrastructure, new infrastructure, modern infrastructure, which could help these economies. It will be one of my concluding remarks, but I think that the European Union, which lacks a common approach to these other initiatives, and China will find a common framework of cooperation, because it's not correct that China will import all the workers or Chinese workers to realize these infrastructures. It's not a good thing. At the same time, we'll find a common framework, a legal framework, a fair framework for investment in the region in order to help this kind of framework of which will be not limited to the single EU member states or single countries of the Europe, also not EU member countries, but as a kind of big and wider project of interconnectivity linking the European Union and also China. Concerning the Southern Europe, we can observe that the Mediterranean Sea is strategic for the maritime Silk Road strategy, because this is a natural sea corridor to create some sea hub along the Mediterranean coast, in Greece, in Italy, in Spain, and in the Adriatic coast. So the Chinese attention to the Mediterranean is very high, and one of the main and expensive investment of China was made by the COSCO company in the Piraeus port. It's a strategic gateway, as I show, to sea routes between Asia and Europe. This is one of the main land and sea corridors to be realized. The problem is that concerning the, on the one hand, Chinese investment helped Greece because European Union supported Greece in the time of the financial crisis, but was not able to make this huge investment in order to upgrade this port, which is fundamental for a country like Greece. European Union was not able to economically support Greece in order to upgrade, in order to valorize, to promote this port. At the same time, now there are some problems linked to the privatization of the port and concerning the possibilities of China in order to further modernize the port, in order to build a new infrastructure, in order to better exploit this port. Of course, there is the opposition, some kind of opposition within the European Union and also by the United States to this growing importance of China in the region. And also Italy and Venice concerning, because in terms of diversification, this part, the Adriatic port of Italy, are also strategic, as in the case of the Balkans, to develop a combination between land and sea corridors. It is a way for China to diversify, one route to the Balkans, one route to the Italy. This is the one of the pillars, one of the topics of the Chinese strategy. In conclusion, after I'd like to have some questions, and if someone disagrees about some points or want to better discuss some of the key issues that I analyzed, I welcome you to, and I push you to make some questions and remarks about my contribution. So, in conclusion, the lack of a common EU policy toward our initiative facilitate the promotion of Chinese interest and geopolitical influence. And this is a bad point, because OBOR could be useful for the European Union, but the European Union must avoid this passive attitude, this divisive attitude toward this project. This project is very important. Chinese economically support this project, but this project has also some foreign and geopolitical implications. And the European Union now is not really. The European Union as a single institution, including the 28 members, is not able to contain this geopolitical strategy of China. We can also observe that, of course, the railway link developed with Germany, with Spain, with Netherlands are important. But there are some individual EU states which are more important in the Chinese perspective. After 3 or 4 years since the inclusion of the European Union within the OBOR initiatives, we can observe a limited economic impact in the European Union perspective, but an increasing interconnectivity. So the projects are good. The European Union should find a way to have an economic return, economic gains, economic revenues in the participation of this project. Of course, the main gain is the realization of infrastructure, but the second step will be to have economic and financial support. One of the main challenges is try to find a common framework between the flexible pragmatism of Chinese authorities and the rigid regulation rules of the European Union. Try to find a solution, even if concerning this last point, I think that the rigid regulation rules for the European Union, it is not always correct, because the European Union, if there is the interest of some of the European countries, the stronger European countries like Germany in the energy sector or for the Nord Stream gas pipeline, could change or could soften the rigid regulation rules. Moreover, this OBOR initiative is included in the EU-China connectivity platform. So a kind of big platform, a big framework in order to develop this connectivity. And in terms of diversification, in terms to contain as a kind of potential reply to this Chinese bigger strategy involving the European Union should look for alternative investment. Okay, Chinese investment are higher, are important, will realize infrastructure. But is this a problem if EU depends only Chinese investment? It is necessary to diversify, it is necessary to look for alternative investment. And one way could be the realization, which is perceived as a kind of regional response to the other initiatives, the 5-port alliance, which includes some of the main Adriatic ports as Capodistria in Slovenia, Fiume or Rijeka in Croatia, Ravenna, Venice and Trieste in Italy. A way to create another framework of ports. Ports are important in the other initiatives, but we can find a new alliance, a new framework of cooperation involving other ports in order to try to contain, to limit it, to better find some gains in the inclusion of these initiatives. This is my conclusive remarks is that the other initiatives show the new geopolitical approach of China. I try to present the relation between European Union and China, but other regions and countries, Central Asia, Caucasus, Russia, Mongolia, South Asia are involved in this project. Europe is one of the part of this global strategy. However, Europe is also important for China as a market. So this is the strength that Europe should exploit. The importance that a European market play in the Chinese strategy, trying to develop a common approach in order to better exploit the inclusion, the economic and the political inclusion in this strategy. I thank you for your attention.
Ovo je bio, kao što smo rekli, uvodni deo i sad imamo vremena za pitanja, diskusije i tako dalje. Možete na srpskom, možete na engleskom, mi ćemo da prevodimo i nekako će to funkcionirati. Izvolite.
Đurđe Branislav, vi ste govorili o tome da su Kinezi pre svega zainteresovani na taj prodor u Evropu. Ali kako tumačite da i Rusija recimo učestvuju u izgradnji te pruge? Oni grade negde deonicu 50 km između Beograda i Novog Sada, koja je u stvari najteža, jer se grade 2 tunela. U čemu vidite interes Rusa da učestvuju u takvim investicijama?
Sad je malo prije koleginica sa RTV-a pa što pitala i onako odličan umor bio u raspravu, Fabio je vrlo zainteresovan da objasni ove druge igrače, tako će mi to iskoristiti. Okay, so the question about Russia, which we had more or less the same Professor Giorgio, who is currently serving here as well, asked how do you perceive actually the position of Russia, especially having in mind that they are here at this corridor, their companies are building 50 kilometers of the railways. Actually, even in that sense, they are part of the overall project. Okay, I can translate.
Okay, thank you for your question. And I believe that so we should highlight that currently Russia is included in the overall initiatives because Russia now, in geopolitical terms, is in a weaker position toward China, and the inclusion of Russia in the overall initiatives is aimed to benefit of the Silk Road economic funds in order to realize and to upgrade Russian national railway interconnection.
Ok, dakle, Rusija je potpuno pravo uključena za ovo ostupnje. Razumite, Rusija je potpuno uključena u celu inicijativu. Ono što Fabio posebno insistira, da se shvati jeste da je Rusija u ovom smislu danas slabiji geopolitički igrač nego Kina u pogledu investicija, mogućnosti da se širi i tako dalje. I u ovom smislu, dakle, Rusija posebno u odnosu prema nekim drugim igračima, govorit ćemo i o Sjedinjenim državama, dakle, podržava ovu inicijativu i gleda da ona također bude benefitor, neko ko će imati koristi od ukupnog paketa, dakle, bilo tako što će njihove kompanije raditi na ovom putu, bilo tako što će dobiti direktne sredstva kojima će se, dakle, graditi infrastruktura i kroz samu Rusiju.
Russia and China are cooperating in different sectors. For instance, in the energy sector with the realization of the power of Siberia pipeline, and Russia is a traditional and influent partner in the so-called post-Soviet area, as well in the Balkans. Russia is an important partner. At present, Russia look and control Chinese initiatives involving Balkans, in Serbia, for instance, is looking, and now in this weaker geopolitical position, Russia is playing a wait-and-see initiatives because it's not so strong. It is not interest of Russia to oppose this project at present.
I malo pre govorio o toj razlici između kratkoročne i dugoročne strategije. Dakle, Rusija danas jeste važan partner za Kinu i obrnuto, posebno u vreme kad je Rusija izružena sankcijama koje su nametnute od strane Vašingtona, ali sprovodi ih Zapadna Evropa. Ona je na neki način, ovo i neka vrsta, da kažemo, izlaza i pomoći za njenu pojačanu poziciju globalno, posebno prema Evropi, i ona naravno nema potpuno otvorenu poziciju kao ovome. Dugoročno ona nije mnogo srećna što Kina ulazi u neke prostore kao što je Istočna Evropa, Mediteran, posebno Balkan, gde Rusija ima svoje neke dugoročne strateške interese, međutim kratkoročno to odgovara i sprovodi ovo, kako kolega Ideo kaže, čeka i gleda strategiju. Dakle, učestvuje ograničeno, prati šta se dešava i nadgleda, nadajući će da će dugoročno njena pozicija ojačati u ovom tomu ili četvrnom ulogu sa Republicom.
The problem concerning Balkans and South Eastern Europe, the main rival for Russia is not China, but European Union and United States project in the security and the energy sector, because it's a challenge to the Gazprom business in the region, of course in Serbia, but not only in Serbia, as to develop alternative corridors which could downplay the business and the role, the influential role of Gazprom in the region, as well as a potential. I also mentioned yesterday the problem, which I don't know, and it is not the problem if Serbia accept or not to join the NATO. It's not a problem, but a potential deepening cooperation or partnership involving Serbia and NATO could annoy Russia, could provoke the reaction, the political and diplomatic reaction for Russia. This is the threat. The economic corridor made by China could be useful for Russia. It's not so. It's not a clear threat like energy or security.
Ok, dakle što se tiče samog Balkana, ovde Rusi nemaju mnogo problema sa ulazkom kineskih investicija, zato što su one pre svega vezane za ekonomski prostor. Ruski interesi i zabrinutost su više vezane za po njemu suštinski sukob koji ovdje imaju pre svega sa Američkim državama i sa Zapadnom Evropom, odnosno Evropskom unijom, i to su pre svega pitanja bezbednosti i energetike. Dakle, energetski postoji ono gde je juče detaljno govorio o tim raznim gasovodima od Nabuka, Tapa i tako dalje, koji se sve grade zapravo kao neka vrsta strateškog usporavanja Gazproma, koji jedini ima gas u ovom trenutku koji može da proda ovde, ali sve ove druge inicijative rade da ga spreče na neki način. I ovo što je druga i posebna priča, juče je mnogo insistirao na tome, da eventualni ulazak Srbije i nekih drugih zemalja iz ovog prostora u NATO bi bio veliki izazov za Rusiju i on smatra da Rusija to ne bi gledala blagonaklono, da bi na neki ozbiljniji način reagovala i zaključuje time da faktički s te strane Kina nije glavni problem i glavni izazivač, pa kratkoročno gledano za Rusiju i zato Rusija može relativno blagonaklono da gleda i da učestvuje u tih inicijativama. Hvala. Izvolite. Izvolite, kolega.
Isidora Nikolizavina, advokat. Nije problem govorim na engleskom.
Naravno, hoćemo samo za
I think it would be easier if we communicate directly in English. I'm an attorney at law representing a number of Chinese clients who were interested. I don't have a question so much as a supplement to what you had said previously. You mentioned the Chinese pragmatic capitalism being slowed down by European strict rules and regulations that are imposed on them. I am a witness to a somewhat different situation with basically the same effect here in Serbia. A number of Chinese companies who come here with the highest recommendations from their government come here and meet with the high Serbian officials and everything is agreed on paper, and this is all within the One Belt, One Road initiative. However, when it comes to fruition of whatever was agreed, nothing comes to being simply because we here don't have a regulated real estate market, transition from the socially owned enterprises and property to private property as such. So this is what slows down. However interested we are in cooperating with the Chinese, both government and companies, we're simply not able to perform whatever we agree on paper.
Treba se prevodi, izvinjam se, ima neko da treba prevod, okvirno da može na englesku, ako treba nekog slova, neka kaže. Okay, please.
No, thank you. It's important that you said, and I only like to add that another problem linked to the problem that you show is that in the connection with Serbia, with Hungary. Hungary is the member of the European Union, so other different rules. So when I mentioned the necessity to find a common framework, is one of the big challenges like that, because you mentioned the problem for to find a common framework involving Serbian and Chinese companies in order to solve the transition from different rules of market. And another problem, this problem should be had in addition to the problems of the strict rule of the European Union member countries. So also for Chinese it's difficult to find a way to invest. Of course, money is money. If there is money, it's easy also to invest. But also to have a fair, a more transparency system, it's useful to try to find a common framework. So I think that given and considering the relevance of the OBOR initiatives, EU members and also members which are not countries which are not members of the European Union, like Serbia or Albania, should find a common framework in order to allow this investment, to find a common framework for investment. I completely agree with you. Yeah, the problem is that. Yeah.
Thank you. Pitao sam ih treba prevod,
moram reći smo razumeli,
u principu se, Fabio složio, dakle, postoje mnogi problemi i u Europskoj uniji, i u primjeri i Mađarske, dakle, i kod nas, i ono na čemu mi insistira jučer pričao, da bi prosto neki zajednički nastup odavde, dakle, on podržava politiku našeg premijera, odnosno predsjednika, koji insistira, dakle, da uprko svemu, ali to je ono što, sad šala nastavno, dakle, ono što Evropljeni problemi nazovu regionalno vlasništvo, dakle, da se samo objedinjen i relativno koordinisan ovaj prostor koji umjesto da se pojavi sa 2 ili 7 miliona stanovnika, može da se pojavi kao jedinstveni akter sa nekih 20-ak, 30, pa neki smatraju do 50 miliona stanovnika i bio možda i jači pregovarač i lakše regulisa ove probleme o kojima je koleginica govorila o pravne prirode, do regulisanih regulativa i tako da.
What about Chinese population in general? I mean, due to one-child policy, the Chinese population is getting older and older. And one day, very soon, in 10, 15 years, it might be a big obstacle for the future cooperation between Europe and China.
So we can, I think that this is a real long-term project. Many analysts say that it's not a feasible project. There are some hindrances, it's not so easy to cooperate. The European Union is the positive model of cooperation. There are some difficulties. United States is against the project, India is against the project, Japan is against the project. So there are big players which could which oppose to the realization of this project. So I think that we can evaluate OBOR in the short, medium term. One of the aspects that I didn't take into, I don't speak today is concerning the energy. The energy this project is also important for the energy issues, because there is a kind of energy Silk Road connecting the Central Asian countries' energy rich to the to China. So this is another project which could be colliding with Russian interest. Concerning the evolution, the domestic evolution of China, one problem could be also when the middle class, the Chinese middle class, which is will need some will fuel their national demand. So China will change the transition from the China normal to a new economic model when the internal demand will be in competition with the external, with the export. But the economic growth and the political growth of the middle class could be a challenge to the political and social control, which now is based the political leadership of China. So I don't know with the transformation, also because the lack of young people which push China to find some way to promote the economic growth of the country. I don't know. It's unpredictable.
They're bullish at the same time.
Yeah, they
Samo kratko, dakle, opet čitam niz stvari koje je pomenuo sada. U sklopu cijele ove priče postoji recimo i poseban deo energetskih sukoba, saradnje i tako dalje, koja bi mogla da bude recimo nešto gde Rusija i Kina u nekim delovima mogu da imaju sukobljene interese. Druga stvar je pitanje srednje klase, i tu već ulazim ovo što je profesor Đurđev pitao, a to je činjenica da će brzo rastuća srednja klasa u Kini, dakle, koja nagoni faktički da se menja ekonomski model, dovesti do ozbiljne evolucije unutarnje. Do sada je Kina išla isključivo na podcenjenosti domaće tražnje i podsticanje spoljne tražnje, da bi što više na taj način dizala svoju industriju i faktički držala svoj narod, da kažem, ispod nekog nivoa standarda, da bi se na taj način više akumuliralo i jače širilo napolju. Ta činjenica da raste srednja klasa i da raste domaća potražnja, verovatno će i menjati ekonomski model, da će oni možda manje baviti spoljašnjim svetom, a više sobom na neki način. I dugoročno gledano i ovo na što je profesor Đurđev ukazao, dakle, da je ta politika jednog deteta, dakle, koja je na snazi već, ja mislim, skoro 30 godina, faktički bila još 80. godina, dovela dok dugoročno gledano Kina već ima potencijalan problem sa radnom snagom i da, ovo što je na kraju kolega rekao, ta činjenica da je bilo puno mladih ljudi koji su gurali Kinu da se širi, će promeniti zapravo sistem u kome sa nedostatkom tih mlađih ljudi oni će malo ta vitalnost opasti i zbog toga su oni pre par godina konačno odustali od ove politike i pustili slobodno rađenje. Ok, idemo dalje. Imam ja, I have to jump in on colleagues like myself. I have actually the clusters, try to focus myself on a couple of issues which I think will be connected with this, but also open some other things which are relatively connected but interesting for us within global and global sphere. First, you spoke and you gave us this model which we had in this bridge in Borča. We just briefly almost passed there, in which you mentioned that there were like 7,000 of Chinese workers. That actually is the whole model that we know from Africa. For example, China gives money, but of course it doesn't allow the domestic firms, companies and domestic workers profit from that, but actually they bring their workers everything. Some are joking that they bring even the noodles from China for soup and so on, but actually the whole idea is to invest, but also to take money immediately back. Do you know for some examples within EU that they have done something like that, you know, and what's the position of EU generally to all of this kind of approach? Okay, let's start with this issue. Do they have some project like we have here?
No, I don't know, but this is the way of the model of investment of China. And this is another challenge, another negative factor which European Union as a single voice should try to solve, because it's not fair that, okay, investments, infrastructure are good, but there is not the involvement of national companies in order to realize this project. So we can find, okay, European Union countries will host Chinese investment to realize infrastructure which are mainly focused on Chinese interests, but at the same time China should allow the involvement of national companies. The problem is that that money and the political supremacy of China is prevailing over the European Union, which is not united in the promoting its own interests. So it's a weakness that China is obviously exploiting.
Okay. Kratko, dakle, pitao sam ga za ovaj slučaj mosta koji smo mi imali, dakle, uslovno rečeno Borča, Pančevo most Mihajlo Pupin, u kome je primjen taj model koji Kina razvijala u Africi. Te zemlje su uopšte nisu punile, dakle da su im trebali ozbiljne investicije, ali je on kontroverzan u tom smislu, ne samo da se odobri novac, da dođu i planovi kineskih izvođača, nego da dođu čak i radnici iz Kine i tako dalje, i da faktički domaće firme i domaće privrede vrlo malo profitira u tom direktnom smislu, ona profitira indirektno zbog infrastrukture, ali da prosto veći novac uzmu kineski izvođači, kineski radnici, nego domaći. Ja sam pitao da li postoje takvi slučaj unutar same Evropske unije, on kaže da do sada, koliko on zna, nije bilo, ali da generalno takva politika u Evropskoj uniji nije prihvatljiva i nije poželjna, mada s druge strane Evropa nema dosta jedinstva i snage da se tome suprotstavi i da ono očekuje da će kineska dominacija što se tiče snage i mogućnosti novca i tako dalje uspjeti da to reši. The second one, actually, is since you've been following the Silk Road, it's on the lecture, I think that you follow China's general development in Central Asia and so on. Just briefly, if you could provide us recent, or let me say the last 5-6 years since they started with this version of their investments all over the world, how many there are, how much they are present in Africa or in America Latina or in Central Asia. Just some brief overview in that, because generally after the crisis and the American, as we know, fall down there, they decided that they will stop buying the American stocks basically and try to invest, in general transition in their investment. That's when they started to invest all over the world, buying the land and resources and so on. So if you could just give us a quick overview.
So I think there is also a different perspective, because the Chinese investment in Africa will help Africa in the realization of infrastructure, in the mining, in different energy sectors which are important for China, because the production of energy which will be then delivered to the Indian Ocean in order to reach Chinese eastern port. The problem is that Western countries are opposing to these Chinese initiatives because they are not able to have a policy in Africa. For instance, the opposition of when China tried to exploit uranium reserves in Niger, France opposed because it's a traditional sphere of influence of France. So the problem is not, as we say, the problem is not that the Chinese expansion is that European countries are not able to make as made along the past years, because it's an expansion similar to the European Union. This investment also in Africa has created some tensions between the locals and the Chinese workers, because for different salaries, because they are not involved in this project. Also in Central Asia there are these problems because and this is a different case because in Central Asia there are some national workers such as in Kazakhstan which are involved in Chinese projects, but they have a different salary, different pay. So it's obvious this situation creates the tension which clashing the course. So Chinese workers and the Chinese and national workers. Another point is that mainly in Africa, Chinese production of textile is downplaying the role of traditional tissues of Africa, of traditional production of I don't know of clothes or something like that. Central Asia, concerning Central Asia, that is a topic that I better know, is that Central Asian investments are important. Central Asia is, China is one of the main trade partners for all Central Asian states. Russia is downplaying its role. Of course, Russia is a traditional partner in the post-Soviet Central Asia, but now China is the main trade partner, mainly in the energy sector, in order to exploit Turkmen and Kazakhstan energy reserves. The problem, there are two kinds of problems. The first one is that the Central Asian public opinion mistrust about Chinese attempts of expansionism or to have lands in Central Asia, because they fear that this Chinese expansionism could be included a potential inclusion of Central Asia in a wider Chinese state. The second one, which is linked to the first, is the potential military expansion in Central Asia. Now, Afghanistan, with the problem in Afghanistan, the problem of security, the need to ensure the security in Xinjiang, Russia with the CSTO is not able. NATO is not able. Russia alone is not able, and also Central Asian states after Ukrainian crisis are have not a good behavior toward Russia. So will be China, but China as a security provider in the region could be a threat, not only help this country to ensure the security. So China now is prevailing, in this medium term is prevailing as a trade partner, but I think that if China should move from the economic sphere to a potential political or military sphere, China will have some problems in order to conquer this region.
Okay. To ste vrlo važnih odgovora i probat ću da ih sažmem, stvarno su vrlo zanimljive stvari. Ono što sam pitao Fabija, to je da nam da neki okvirni pregled, dakle, širenje Kine u posljednjih 5, 6, 7, ali posebno recimo zadnjih 10 godina, zato što je nakon financijske krize 2007. godine, koja je pogodila se i američke države, po prvi put su Kinezi zapitali koliko je pametan njihov model da sav svoj višak novca ulažu u kupovinu američkih obveznica federalnih rezervi. Da su onda znatno smanjili tu politiku i krenuli faktički da ovaj nagomilani novac od velikih stopa rasta investiraju svuda u svetu. I to je dosta dovelo do nevjerojatnih stvari. Recimo, Afrika je tu najveći najznačajniji primjer gde se smatra, i on je to potvrdio faktički, da je Kina sa ogromnim investicijama proterala maltene Evropsku uniju, recimo primjer Francuske u Nigeru, koja smatraju to tradicionalno njen prostor utjecaja, gde prosto ne mogu da se suprotstavi kineskom kretanju na neki način, da sećamo se Hillary Clinton je govorila o tome da upozaravala i pretila faktički po Africi da se odbiju kineske investicije, međutim Kina ima strahoviti potencijal mnogo novca koji ulaže na različite načine, od kupovine prirodnih resursa, energetike, kupovine zemlje širom sveta i tako dalje. I to je u Africi dalo dosta ozbiljne rezultate u odnosu na Evropsku uniju. Naravno, govori o tome da postoje i tenzije, recimo, sa lokalnim radnicima, da je, recimo, tu primenjen taj, za razliku od Kazahstana i Centralne Azije, gde je jedan malo drugačiji model, ali da, recimo, u pitanju tekstila, niske cene kineskog tekstila su znatno suzbile domaću proizvodnju i tako dalje. Međutim, generalno su te vlade zadovoljne jer dobiju uzdanije partnera, novac za investicije i tako dalje. U samoj Centralnoj Aziji, koju on poznaje mnogo bolje, dakle, situacija je sledeća. Postoje Kina je najveći ekonomski i trgovinski partner tamo, međutim postoje dva velika straha. Prvo strah je od kineske političke i potencijalno geopolitičke ekspanzije. Maltene on je pomenuo strah da će ceo taj prostor, dakle centralno-azijskih zemalja, u nekoj varijanti biti uključen u kinesku širu sferu uticaja i ono što ih posebno brine, to je moguća vojna ekspanzija, jer on govori o tome da postoji jedna vrsta vakuma u pogledu toga ko može da obezbedi neku vrstu bezbednostnog pokrića tamo. On smatra da Rusija do sada ne uspeva da pokrije sve te zemlje adekvatno, da NATO nije uspeva adekvatno da uđe ni Turska i da Kina, koja ima najveći ekonomski uticaj, u slučaju da pokuša da ga pretvori u politički, vojni i geopolitički uticaj, može da ima probleme, jer on kaže postoji jedan značajan strah od toga da Kina ne iskoristi tu svoju veliku snagu da uđe na neke druge načine. Okay, and I will finish with just one additional issue. You have mentioned this investment, economic, infrastructural, different aspects of One Belt, One Road initiative. Actually, could you just briefly comment about soft power as a part of the whole project? Because we spoke yesterday, I know for some of the initiative, for example, opening of the agricultural center in Belgrade, in Banja Luka, here, and for the first time we see that they are willing to invest in translation of the books, maybe to bring some artists and so on and so on. Pitao sam ga dakle o nekoj moći kao delu celog paketa.
Yes, the soft power of China is an interesting tool, but also an interesting topic to study or to analyze, because it is evident. Also, I can show the model of Italy. There are a lot of Confucius institutes which are opening in Italy, and they have a lot of money to invest to promote conferences, to translation, to promote the publication of books. So, and Italy could be important in this strategy, but like the example that you made for Balkans. So it is a way, and Chinese authorities clearly understand that to try to convince the public opinion that these investments are good, that China is not a threat. And I think that China is pushed to have this soft power approach, because China is frequently described as a threat, a potential threat, a military threat, but it's the same, and so it's my opinion, I know, but it's the same policy that the United States adopted to the European Union after the Second World War, the United States model. It's the same thing, investment in order, promoting investment and promoting culture, and the Chinese the United States model. It's different because, of course, Europe and the United States are Western countries. We have a lot of common framework. With Chinese, we have some evident differences in cultural differences, etc. But this is a way to try to, it is an interesting, it will be one of the topic of study to try to demonstrate that this soft power as a tool of the Chinese foreign policy in order to promote this strategy, this investment, in order to try to reorient the position of the European Union public opinion. True, yeah.
I posljedno što sam ga pitao, to je da u okviru cijele ove inicijative koja je zasnovana na velikim ekonomskim, energetskim, geopolitičkim interesima i tako dalje, postoji deo koji se odnosi na takozvanu neku moć, dakle soft power, a to su stvari koje su vezane za promovisanje njihove kulture, značaja diplomatije, prestiža, raznih oblika intelektualne saradnje, zato što recimo postoji inicijativa da srpska nauka uđe u taj neki širi konzorcijum, mislim da time treba bude nosilac, gde bi ovih 16 zemalja napravili jedan zajednički projekat naučnih istraživanja zajedno sa Kinom i tako dalje. I on je rekao da to je potpuno tačno, da kao što ovdje imamo otvaranje takozvanih Konfučije kulturnih centara u Beogradu, u Banja Luci i tako dalje, gdje ih Italija puna, nekoliko njih otvoreno i u drugim zemljama, da su počeli konačno sa celim paketom koji podrazumeva razne konferencije, povezivanje naučnika, naučnu saradnju, prevođenje kineskih knjiga, obrnuto i tako dalje, kaže da to je potpuno očekivano normalno. Fokus je na činjenicu da se Kina uglavnom predstavlja kao vojna i svaka druga pretnja za Zapad i da Kina na taj način pokušava pokazati da se normalna, ozbiljna kultura koja nije opasna ni na koji način i on se potpuno slaže da je to logično, jer su prosto uvek da je to upravo model koji su sve američke države razvijale posle Drugog svjetskog rata, znači značajne investicije koje su praćenje investicijama u zajedničko kulturno, intelektualno i ostalo povezivanje. Tu naravno postoji problem te civilizacijske razlike, lakše je bilo u Americi, ali s druge strane, dakle, Kina danas u dobu interneta i tako dalje može lakše da što se kaže, priđe i u svakom slučaju će i to biti deo ukupne inicijative. I evo može još jedno pitanje da ovako budemo praviti. Evo izvolite.
Ipak ću na srpsku nastaviti.
Može slobodno.
Ovakva nagla inicijativa Kine će svakako doprineti dodatnoj razmeni i roba, i usluga, i kultura, tako dalje. A ja bih pitao da li će taj dodatni intenzitet u odnosima biti praćen i omogućiti da Evropska unija, odnosno Rusija sa jedne strane, mislim, Evropska unija i Kina, odnosno Rusija i Kina, bar oni razmenjuju robe, usluge, uslova u sopstvenim valutama bez oslanjanja na dolar.
This actually, the story that you mentioned briefly about the idea of China to move the trade from dollar to yuan-based economy. So what do you think? Are they going to succeed with that, and how much are they capable of providing?
Thank you for your question. I think that it is a way to try to reduce the global dependence on one single currency, on the dollars. It could be important if this our project go ahead. In this case, it's normal that the yuan, the Chinese currency, will have a growing place in the global and financial system, because it's a way, because a lot of the international economic exchange will be developed with the new money, with the new currency. So it is a way, and the perception, I think, is that okay, we used to have dollar as the main currency in the global exchange, but it's now like that. Before it was the sterling, and so it's only now the evolution of the markets is that. I think I'm not worried about this because also Russia and also Iran have attempted to cut this predominance of dollars in the international exchanges, mainly concerning the role of in the energy sphere. And it could be a threat for the United States, mainly because most of the Middle East suppliers now, the energy sphere are dominated by dollars. A potential change could threaten the sphere of influence of the United States. So I think that personally is not, for me, is not a threat. It's only the evolution of the markets, because also the predominance of a single currency could be not good for the global market. And to change from one to another, in my perception, is not a threat.
Maybe another perception?
American perception, of course.
As a joke, actually, we never thought about, getting out in the dollar-based trade in oil, ended up in moving so in that question, I think it's really...
of course.
I'm joking. On je njegovo lično mišljenje iznao, on smatra da posebno kad je u pitanju trgovina između ovih velikih novih igrača, članica BRICS-a pre svega, ali i trgovina u energetici, da je potpuno logično očekivati da će te zemlje koje na neki način osporavaju predominaciju i unipolarni sve, dakle vladavine dolara, ići u tom pravcu polako uvođenja trgovine u juanima, rublama i tako dalje. I da je to po njemu potpuno logično i potrebno. Ne vidi zašto bi ceo svet morao da trguje samo jedne valute. Ja sam onda malo našalio, rekao, nisam siguran da se jedne Amerikanci slažu s vama, rekao, ima ta šala da kogod je probao da razmisli poput Gaddafi ili Iraka da izađe iz trgovine koje zasnije na dolaru, nije se baš najbolje probao u tom smislu. Ali u svakom slučaju poveđate jedno od vrlo bitnih pitanja za dalji razvoj međunarodne trgovine i međunarodnih odnosa i politike. Okay, we can finish here. Hvala vam svima. Thank you very much, Fabio. And since we had to, yesterday we had like 2.5 hours, but we had enough time. Today we are much shorter because we had to hurry up and to go to the airport. U svakom slučaju, hvala vam, bilo je vrlo zanimljivo.